Now, I think that we could all agree here that 2023 has been the absolute worst year for Disney, not just because of Bob Iger and the board of directors. We also have to dig deeper and focus and realize that a lot to blame here has a lot to do with some of the top shareholders, such as BlackRock and Vanguard, funding all of this nonsense and the flawed DEI agenda that is not only flawed, but also hypocritical and makes absolutely no sense when it comes to a lot of their franchises like Marvel, Star Wars, and just Disney in general, flat out. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the subject, shall we? Now, we know that there's a lot of things happening between Snow White director Marc Webb, as well as the writers of this film, such as Greta and Erin, that worked very hard on this movie, that really put out a terrible script, to be honest. I mean, the sounds of this movie, everything happening with the test screening, everything happening with the re-edits, this is going to be an astronomical failure on their part. The fact that they worked so hard on this is just a big waste of time. But let's focus on what's going on with director Marc Webb. Now, for those of you that do not know him, he worked on things like The Amazing Spider-Man's 1 and 2, as well as 500 Days of Summer. Those are really his top 3 movies that he's really known for. Besides that, he worked on a lot of small stuff, a lot of lesser-known projects out there. But what's even all the more revealing has a lot to do with Marc Webb's overall opinion and focus on the backlash and those that do not approve of the Snow White live-action remake. Let's get into all of this now. Now, given that Snow White director Marc Webb actively is busy supervising the re-edits of the film by Disney, one major development has to do with Webb's view of the current backlash of the film. Now, Webb went on to deliver the following to everyone. I think the biggest issue that we are facing right now are groups of individuals that are resisting to adapt to the times and accept a modern spin on Snow White, which I think is nothing more than having a small-minded way of thinking. As a creator and as a director, it's quite offensive to see so many revolting against a film like this that I think is going to be a masterpiece. We have a new iteration of the Seven Dwarfs that I think the majority will enjoy. But of course, you will always have a loud and opinionated minority that wants nothing to do with your vision or concepts, and it's been getting quite ridiculous to deal with lately. I also think it's quite disgusting that so many so-called fans of the 1937 original feel that we needed to retell the movie from start to finish, which is just flat out boring in my opinion, and really does not add to the story. So guys, let me just stop here quick before I get to the next thing that Marc Webb talks about, is that, according to him, it's lazy storytelling, it's boring writing and or directing if you just have to retell what is done and has been done for the past couple of years. Now, the thing is, we've seen this done many times by many franchises that turn out to be very successful, so I don't know what his argument is. We have seen Lord of the Rings, which adapted the books. We have seen Harry Potter, which adapted the books. So what's the big deal of remaking a movie that's adapting the 37 original into live action properly and accurately so? I don't understand the big issue with that. Marc Webb, I guess, can't really get a grasp of why that's what they should have done. You know, we know that writers Greta Gerwig, by the way, in my opinion, is a very agenda-driven writer, and that's exactly why she took up this offer by Disney to write Snow White. You know, we all have to remember that the writers are also to blame, like Greta and Erin as well. So, Marc Webb, alright, we know that he has a very flawed view of the general public. This is also why he took up this role over at Disney. He wanted to do something different with Snow White. He wanted to give it a modern spin. He wanted to essentially divert from the source material, and he's going to talk about that in a second. But not just that. This was all an intent to essentially strip down pop culture. Alright, that's what I'm all about. I'm all about defending pop culture because I think that it is something that really is so special and really spans generations. And we have companies like Disney and, in many cases, Warner Brothers in certain areas really destroying pop culture piece by piece. So let's get into this further. So, He goes on to elaborate again. This is why we needed a modern take on this film. Not that it's set in modern times, but just a modern concept of the movie. Retelling the original would have been lazy and flat out boring for me as a director, and I think that Greta did a fantastic job working on this script, mainly with the help of Aaron. But these loud, opinionated people think they know everything. I feel that we made the right choice, drastically changing how the seven dwarfs would be represented in this film, and for those that do not approve of that can just sit back and be quiet. It's the creator's choice, like myself, Greta's, and Aaron's, to actually tell the story where we want to go. Disney wanted to do something different with this tale, and so did we. And I feel that we accomplished that greatly this time around. We needed to ditch the source material in order to make something interesting again, is how I see it. Now, look, this is exactly how Disney thinks, and I'm not surprised that this is how Marc Webb thinks. They are doing this not just with Snow White, but Disney intends to fully do this with the upcoming reboots, and yes, I say reboots, of already established live-action material, such as Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, and let's not forget about Alice in Wonderland. Those are going to be getting redone, as well as the Maleficent movies. This is Bob Iger's plan, and this is the Disney board's plan, and it doesn't matter what Bob Iger said the other day about, quieting the noise or anything like that, which doesn't really mean much. He was just doing that to keep the shareholders afloat. We know that at the end of the day, their DEI agenda is doubling down, and it is coming at full force. Marc Webb, we know that he's not the best filmmaker out there. He's not the best director out there, and I think that's a reason why Disney obtained him. They didn't have to pay him as much money because he doesn't have as much, popularity. He doesn't really have that much stardom power, per se, as a director. If they got somebody, for example, I'm just throwing a name out there, Christopher Nolan, they would have had to pay 3 times the amount of money, maybe even 4 times, to get him involved in a movie like this, and it wouldn't have worked out. So we know that at the end of the day, Marc Webb was the right choice for them, getting somebody that is more or less the underdog, not quite as known to the common moviegoer. If you ask any of your family or friends who Marc Webb is, they're probably going to be like, who? Who's that? If you say Christopher Nolan, many of them will probably have heard that name. So what's interesting about this, again, is how Disney is doubling down on this nonsense. Marc Webb is confirming here that he, along with Disney, are very proud, as well as writers Greta Gerwig and Aaron. They are proud about the way that the Seven Dwarfs are reimagined in this movie and how they are represented. And that is all the more troubling. The fact that they are proud about this. The fact that they are supportive over this decision by Disney that has been passed down to Marc, Greta, and Aaron, and how they all agree with each other on this new reimagining, or as Bob Iger likes to put it, this new iteration of Snow White, the tale itself, right? So anyway, guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.